Welcome back for round 2 of punching Voldemort repeatedly in the nose. Let's get right to it. Point 4. Voldemort massively empowers his enemies, giving them time and space to rise to the threat he poses. So if it wasn't already obvious, Sir Dark Lord Voldemort, despite his god complex, supreme faith in his abilities, and his belief that he alone should determine the fate of the entire world, is weirdly governed by sentiment and superstition, making himself a slave to forces he believes are outside his control. As I previously mentioned, Voldemort created a self-fulfilling prophecy when he attacked Harry as a tot, but I guess since Voldy technically survived, he must have thought the prophecy not actually fulfilled, because he continues to adhere to the idea that him and Harry are deigned to be mortal enemies, destined to meet in some glorious final battle.
I am not interested in your funny feeling.
It didn't work out well for him the first time, not sure why this is something he'd even want to happen. This belief manifests in numerous self-destructive policies which not only hinder his ability to actually defeat Harry, but also gives his enemies ample breathing room to hone their abilities, gather their allies, and meet the power of the Dark Lord on a more even playing field. He's come a long way from attacking a defenseless baby out of nowhere. Later on, you'd have trouble convincing him to attack Harry at all. Even the mere act of attacking Harry as a baby served to empower him further, giving him fame, fortune, and seeing him fall under the watchful eye of one of the most powerful wizards in the world. Later in his campaign, Voldemort insists that he must take on Harry personally, giving standing orders to all his followers that he is basically not to be harmed.
I must be the one to kill Harry Potter.
What he believes would actually happen if someone else killed him is beyond me. It should be obvious by now, but these prophecies don't seem designed to go his way. It would be better for him to defy them and make his own fate. At the moment, he's just cutting off his nose to spite his face. And he adheres to this while also not realizing Harry is a pseudo-Horcrux, still somewhat shielded by his mother's protection spell, not to mention a few other magical factors which make attacking him a very risky proposition. It might actually be impossible to kill him directly. While there is definitely a connection between Harry and Voldemort that goes beyond their established links, the two sharing a yin and yang symmetry, mirroring each other in many ways. Both being half-bloods, both orphans with similar poor upbringings, both bestowed with impressive natural magical power and driven with ambition, they even end up with similar wands to each other, which in and of itself doesn't really mean anything at all. There is no suggestion the universe will implode should Voldemort have someone else kill Harry. I'm left to assume the true reason for Voldy's obsession with killing Harry personally is because he merely wants the recognition of doing so and or revenge, still suffering some embarrassment for being bested by a helpless baby.
Pity, baby.
The trouble is, this line of thinking entails far more risk than just getting one of his followers to do the deed.
Let another occupy this task.
He could have simply had Harry assassinated on one of the numerous occasions he ventured outside of Hogwarts. Yet this never comes to pass, and when his followers do happen upon Harry, his confusing standing orders and fear of retribution from the boss means they won't risk even touching him. By deeming Harry almost holy in nature, he has massively empowered him in the eyes of many and has marked him as an equal. Aside from his superstitious beliefs around Harry, Voldemort also has a strong sentimentality bordering on obsession with Hogwarts itself. Seeming to regard it as his one true home, he seeks influence over it in his younger years by applying for a job as a teacher with designs to corrupt the school from within.
I could only imagine what an awful loss that would be to the school.
And then later, he tries to take control of the school directly. And look, his interest in Hogwarts is somewhat understandable. The school being not only an established seat of power in the wizarding world, but containing a treasure trove of ancient magical knowledge and trinkets, filled with wizards and witches who will offer the most resistance to his plans. But with his reluctance to outright destroy Hogwarts, he ends up making it a sanctuary for his enemies more than anything, the main base from which they can launch their counter-offensive against him. If only Voldemort could extend his sentimentality to his followers, because unfortunately, Nagini aside, he treats all living beings with nothing but utter contempt, including people who are meant to be his allies, further interfering with his plans by creating more unnecessary risk. Point 5. Voldemort breeds contempt among his followers, making them disloyal, unreliable, and prone to errors. Despite Voldemort not exactly exuding the traits of a typical leader, across both his campaigns for world domination, he somehow managed to amass quite the army. Starting with his gang of high school friends, Voldemort going on to recruit a legion of magical creatures along with wizards and witches, who were motivated to join for a multitude of different reasons.
Malcontents, outlaws, and mercenaries
Some were seduced by his promises of great power, others were convinced by his designs to restore the aristocracy. More brutish folk signed up simply so they could indulge their vicious tendencies, while others were recruited directly by Voldemort and were too intimidated to say no. The more naive among them believing Voldemort would bring about a peaceful, secure society in the aftermath, which is laughable once you hang with the guy for 5 minutes. He needs people to suffer as much as he needs oxygen.
He's vile and cruel, and you're pathetic.
And perhaps the most tenuously loyal of all were tricked, blackmailed, or had a jinx placed on them, forcing them to join. None of these divergent motivations being a strong base from which to build a team or achieve success.
They're an embarrassment to the wizarding world, all of them.
Made worse by Voldemort's erratic leadership and his tendency to abuse everyone within his sphere. It's safe to say that many of his followers don't understand exactly what they've signed up for, and I'm not talking about the fact you'd be forgiven for thinking you've joined an industrial metal band. No, Voldemort rules this motley crew almost exclusively through fear. Failing to deliver on his promises in any meaningful way, he bullies and mistreats everyone.
What's the use in being a disgrace to the name of wizard if they don't even pay you well for it?
Taking any and all opportunities to get up the nose of his underlings or rub their noses in their supposed shortcomings. The poor Malfoys know all about this. After failing him in several respects, they seem absolutely terrified of him. Voldemort maintains a wafer-thin level of control, resulting in the typically poor performance outcomes associated with this kind of management style.
Completely demented, of course. Terrifying to be in the same room with.
The majority of Death Eaters are walking on eggshells whenever the boss is around and second-guessing themselves constantly, leaving them withholding vital information, covering up mistakes, reluctant to deliver bad but essential news, and failing to call on them at times when they probably should.
Behaving like a babbling, bumbling band of baboons.
During the Second Wizarding War, Voldemort explicitly tells his Death Eaters that they are only to signal him if they capture Harry Potter or else face severe consequences. My guy, did you ever think maybe there might be something else important that's worth notifying you about?
I'm afraid we feel you've rather lost your touch.
As it was with Darth Vader and the other stupid villainous leaders, shutting your mouth, being bereft of initiative, and sinking into the woodwork is the best way to survive being a Death Eater. This campaign of fear may keep his troops compliant in the short term, but in the long term it seems inevitable that most, lacking true loyalty, would seek to leave or betray him at any moment of weakness.
We must find a way to contact our friends.
Though admittedly there are a few who display some level of genuine loyalty, unsurprisingly these people are the most thoroughly brainless of them all. Take this guy, Barty Crouch Jr., after being accused of being a Death Eater by one of his former comrades. Rather than just dismissing his accusations as the desperate lies of a condemned man, he immediately tries to run and starts snarling like a raging feral, ignoring the fact his powerful and ultimately corrupt father in charge of these proceedings could have done something to shield his son from prosecution. But now, with his guilt obvious and public, he has no choice but to send him off to Azkaban. But then there are other Death Eaters who are too smart, far smarter than Voldemort himself. His supposed double agent Snape, who in reality has been on Dumbledore's side since he attacked Harry as a baby and killed the love of Snape's life, Lily Potter. Snape expertly convincing Voldy of his loyalty, feeding him phony intel and sabotaging his plans every step of the way. Surely the Dark Lord should have been asking himself, if this guy has been allowed to hang around Hogwarts all this time since your death, he probably isn't loyal to you. It's not like they're gonna let vicious murderers interact with these magical sproglets. And hey, just to be really sure, why not demand Snape release his mental guards and probe his mind directly? Voldemort supposedly being an expert at mind reading, or leglomancy as they call it. Instead, he just takes him at his word. With Voldemort somehow convinced of Snape's loyalty, he becomes an invaluable asset for the forces of good during the Second Wizarding War, which as you can probably imagine does not go too well at all. So let's dive right into a semi-quick run through of Voldemort's activities and see how his woeful Horcrux scheme, his hubris, his silly pureblood supremacy ideology, his empowering of his enemies, his poor leadership and his dumbass Death Eaters all combine to create a total shitstorm of incompetence which will inevitably lead to the one thing Voldemort fears above all else, his death. Point 6. Voldemort's legion of undesirable traits combine to sabotage his plans every step of the way. So after Voldemort's self-inflicted death during the First Wizarding War, it isn't surprising that his motley crew, lacking true allegiance to him, abandoned their master and his campaign. Most being very quick to denounce him and move on with their lives, and who could blame them? Voldemort's demise would surely have come as quite the relief.
That was very wrong indeed, boys. Very wrong of you.
That's the trouble when you traumatize your followers, they're not exactly going to jump to assist you should you get what you deserve. Only Bellatrix and a few others staying loyal, and foolishly so, getting themselves locked up in Azkaban when they should have just played ball with the authorities and then sought out their master. Even if someone was available to assist him, Voldemort seemingly didn't tell anyone there was a way to resurrect him, although many of them suspected he might be back. Obviously, he wouldn't want to tell them the full deal, but at the very least, he could have made some kind of plan. Hey guys, just letting you know, if I happen to die, I'll be hanging around an Albanian forest. It would be cool if you could come say hi. Job done. Instead, Voldemort's still tethered to the physical world thanks to his Horcruxes, not doing much except possessing animals which only provide limited functionality, a human body required to perform magic, and the necessary rituals to bring him all the way back. And he didn't seek out a human host because he feared detection from the Auras, who were still looking for him. He's gone pretty timid for someone who cannot be killed. What exactly were you scared of? So without any means of bringing himself back, he kinda just wafts around like a bad fart, waiting for something to happen. Luckily, a power-hungry, gullible young man is on his way to offer assistance. Professor Quirrell visiting the forest hoping to find a means of controlling his dark powers. Voldemort taking advantage of his weaknesses to possess him, learning of the Philosopher's Stone which can make the elixir of life, which he believes has the potential to resurrect him. Ordering Quirrell to steal the stone from Gringotts, though luckily all-knowing Dumbledore thwarted this attempt by moving the stone earlier on the same day, hiding it at Hogwarts, leaving Voldemort no option but to fully inhabit Quirrell and infiltrate the school. And conveniently, his infant mortal enemy has now grown a bit and starts attending Hogwarts around the same time. Voldemort orders Quirrell to try and kill the young Potter during a Quidditch match, which is exactly the last time he tries to get someone else to kill Harry. Should have kept that campaign up until the job was done. Professor Quirrell pulls a few shenanigans to infiltrate the hiding place of this mirror thing, which has been used to conceal the stone, and his oversized clown turban has been used to hide Voldemort's presence? What the F? So now you can magic yourself up a proper nose, huh? Unbeknownst to both Quirrell and Voldy, Lily's protection spell is still active after all these years, seeing Quirrell turn to dust when he touches the boy and expelling Voldemort to ghost status once again. Nose or not, he obviously didn't smell that one coming. He may not be able to perform magic, but at least even in this state, he can still enjoy having a schnoz. Presumably at this point, Voldemort still didn't understand how Harry had managed to kill him as a baby. Maybe it would have been a good idea to make sure the boy was dead long before you got to this stage. If need be, trick some other naive student into accessing the Philosopher's Stone. This fiasco leading to Dumbledore and his colleague opting to destroy the stone rather than risk it falling to Voldemort. Voldemort badly fumbling one of the only means by which he could return.
Got to have your wits about you.
It leaves me wondering why he didn't just use Quirrell to resurrect himself via the method he ultimately chooses. Or wait, don't tell me, Voldemort had no concrete resurrection plan. That definitely tracks.
Do you think you could possibly behave a little less like yourself?
And it's worth noting that instead of using Horcruxes, Voldemort probably could have made himself a Philosopher's Stone before his death, something even Dumbledore thought him capable of, and then use the stone to make an ongoing supply of the elixir of life, which would allow him to live for as long as he wanted. Like the creator of the original stone, Nicholas Flamel, who was well over 600 years old when he chose to die rather than let Voldemort get his creation. Dumbledore reckons Voldemort wouldn't want to rely on the elixir of life, because of course relying on this whole mess of a Horcrux plan was so much better.
Once again, you put your keen and penetrating mind to the task and as usual come to the wrong conclusion.
I mean sure, it won't help you retain your youthful visage, but it's still better than looking like a pasty reptilian.
Yeah, he's absolutely gorgeous. Let's say we get undercover before someone murders him.
So Voldemort, dispossessed and listless as ever, flees back to his forest home, waiting around for something to happen yet again.
It's an odd sort of place, this, isn't it? Do you live here?
Maybe at this point he should risk contacting a few of his Death Eaters, not sure what he's expecting to happen. though part of himself was messing around at Hogwarts at least. At some point in the past, Voldemort entrusting his Horcrux diary to Lucius Malfoy and telling him of its power to open the Chamber of Secrets, which he hoped would purge the school of Muggleborns and fulfill his ancestors' goals. Why he deemed this worthy of risking his Horcrux, I do not know. You'd think he would have learned his lesson the first time when he unleashed the basilisk as a schoolboy, almost getting Hogwarts closed, which would have seen him sent back to the orphanage he hated. So thinking his boss is probably gone for good and looking to rid himself of dark magical items that could link him back to Voldemort, Lucius takes the initiative and slips the diary to Ginny to set things in motion. At which point the basilisk merely starts petrifying Muggleborns, a treatable malady. Was mildly inconveniencing a few mudbloods really worth all this risk?
Judging by the state of this, I'd say not.
Tom Riddle's soul piece, seeming to believe that Ginny could serve as a means to bring Voldemort all the way back. Though let's not pretend that was the plan from the start, and I'm not sure what that would mean for Voldy Prime. Maybe he'd be left to roam the forest for eternity. Tom Riddle, now at least able to partially manifest physically, picking up Harry's wand and reaching for the diary and or Harry when it was already too late. If this diary was his only link to the physical realm, shouldn't he be monitoring the thing like a hawk and grabbing it as soon as he's able? Harry destroying the diary simply to stop Tom Riddle. He didn't even know it was a Horcrux to be compelled to destroy it thanks to this pointless plan. Voldemort coming to believe the loss of his diary was exclusively Lucius's fault when clearly two versions of himself deserved some of the blame. This was a failure of leadership more than anything. Lucius may have jumped the gun a bit, but he got the Chamber of Secrets opened and the basilisk released. It was primarily Tom who put the diary at extreme risk. For all Lucius knew, the diary was just some old magical book. He had no idea of its true importance. Luckily, despite this setback and through no doing of his own, help is on the way for Voldemort. His former follower Peter Pettigrew, aka Wormtail, who avoided accountability after Voldemort fell by hiding as Ron Weasley's rat for years, eventually gets exposed and decides he's got nothing left to lose. I guess life as Weasley's lap rat was probably the best treatment he's ever received. So he travels to Albania seeking his former master, hoping to improve his power and status. How he knew to find Voldemort there is not clear. This Albanian forest probably smells like cheese or something. Now, with a magical set of hands in the world, he gets Wormtail to magic him up a rudimentary body potion, which Voldemort somehow drinks. From the back of someone's head, I guess? Conjuring this limp, weak, disturbing fetoid for Voldemort to inhabit. How is this better than being a ghost? Now Ratman has to play wet nurse carrying around his whittled Dark Lord baby. Admittedly, this thing being one step closer to a fully formed body and allowing Voldemort to cast spells and whatnot. Establishing a plan to bring himself all the way back and kill Harry Potter in the process, at least theoretically. Unfortunately, his plan is so unnecessarily convoluted, he'll be lucky to achieve anything at all. So Barty Crouch Jr. has escaped from prison and immediately resumes his streak of reckless stupidity, crashing the Quidditch World Cup and announcing Voldemort's return to the world in spectacular fashion, and far too prematurely at a time when his master is still vulnerable. For once, Voldemort doesn't seem too angry about this obvious error. In fact, he gives Barty even more responsibility, making him the centerpiece of his plan. With an assist from some Polyjuice potions, sending him into Hogwarts posing as a new defense against the dark arts teacher, Mad-Eye Moody. Executing an elaborate scheme to get Harry into the Triwizard Tournament, where he'll eventually be whisked away to Voldemort and his waiting crew. Unfortunately, the Triwizard Tournament is meant to be for older students. It's extremely dangerous, and their plan relies on all these adults just going along with an underage wizard being included. I mean, this also technically means that Hogwarts has allowed 2 contenders in the competition. At the very least, the other school representatives should be livid about this. And for the plan to work, Harry can't just be in the tournament, he actually has to win, which despite a few assists from Barty posing as Mad-Eye is anything but a given. Harry almost dies during his stoush with a particularly nasty dragon, and they definitely need him at the graveyard alive since they plan to use his blood. Once Harry gets to the final stage, the Triwizard Cup, now a portkey, transporting him to the Little Hangleton graveyard where the Dark Lord Infant and Ratman await. But surely there were far easier ways to go about this. Crouch could have used his relationship as Harry's teacher to simply trick him into touching a portkey at any time and transport him out of there. Or simply lure him out of Hogwarts grounds or drug him with a potion and take him away himself. Do we honestly need him alive, or is that just so Voldemort can have some fun messing with him? If not, then simply do any of the aforementioned, take his blood and kill him. All of these ideas have far fewer points of failure than the ludicrously complicated scheme they go for. And you know what? Another great time for you guys to have kidnapped Harry was during the Quidditch World Cup. Then at least that pointless rabble-rousing would have served a purpose. And to make matters worse, for some reason Crouch didn't bring along enough Polyjuice potions to get the job done. So he's been pilfering from Snape's stash, drawing unnecessary suspicion. What, these Dark Wizard elites couldn't rustle up some basic potion ingredients? Barty also has a serious tell in the form of his incessant lip-licking mannerism, which seems to be at its worst around the person most likely to recognize it. But despite all odds, their scheme miraculously works. Harry and Cedric end up being transported to the weirdest cookout ever. Wormtail concocting a nefarious brew, throwing in Dark Lord Feetoid like a rancid oxtail, combining it with the bones of Tom Sr., the blood of Voldemort's enemy, and thrown in a little hand seasoning as can be expected with this kind of weird street food. And I guess hope what emerges is somehow better? So you're telling me this is Voldemort fully formed? This? Little did Voldy know that taking Harry's blood into his being may have lifted Lily's protection spell from him, but it also extended her protection to Voldemort as well, making it now impossible for him to kill Harry and tethering Harry to the living world through him. A mistake Voldemort would pay through the nose for in time.
If I were you, I shouldn't get too used to being back. In fact, I mightn't bother unpacking at all.
Unfortunately, this development also happens to coincide with Voldemort ramping up his obsession with personally killing the boy. But hey, at least he's back in the flesh, I guess. First point of order, call in the old bros and magic up Wormtail a hand. Maybe a nose while you're at it. Even a silver one would have been better than whatever this is meant to be. Now Voldemort, finally able to meet his nemesis as an equal, starts acting the absolute fool, seeking to pay back years of suffering supposedly inflicted by Harry by doing everything in his power to not kill him. No, let's waste some time and increase risk by toying with him. That'll make you feel better. Voldy releasing him from his restraints, allowing him his wand, and goading him into a duel, seemingly forgetting that the portkey and a perfect getaway is just lying around here somewhere. As the duel gets underway, Voldemort signaling his minions to back off and leave Harry to him.
Do nothing! He's mine to finish!
He even intentionally misses Harry with a spell when he turns tail and tries to run away, which seems like the perfect opportunity to actually just kill him, not that he could. Little does Voldemort know, there is yet another convenient plot contrivance hindering his ability to get at Harry. This time the fact that both their wands share the same core, allowing them to harm but not kill each other. Even so, Harry somehow gets the upper hand. Voldemort's most recent victims manifesting and offering a distraction, allowing Harry to jump on the portkey and make a hasty escape. Voldemort snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, as is his way. He probably should have just abracadabraed the guy while he had him strung up. Now Harry's beamed directly to some of the most important people in the wizarding world, free to notify them of Voldemort's return. So with nothing left to lose, Barty outs his identity, hoping to mop up after Voldemort's failings by taking Harry with him. Something he should have tried far more discreetly from the start. But oh look, some adults have finally entered the room. Barty has been hiding the real Mad Eye in a magical chest that has the space warping properties of the TARDIS, leading me to believe that this so-called Crouch is just another evil variant of the Doctor in an alternate universe. I always thought he was magic.
Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Sorry, was that a bit too on the nose? With the government refusing to acknowledge the reality of Voldy's return, Dumbledore re-establishes the Order of the Phoenix, a clandestine group of good guy wizards and witches tasked with resisting Voldemort's efforts. And with the Dark Lord freeing some of his former colleagues from Azkaban, the Second Wizarding War begins in earnest. But despite everything currently going his way, Voldemort decides once again to obsess over the prophecy. Though previously he partially overheard it, he now wants to hear the entire thing, as if that would help him achieve anything. Voldemort displaying one of the rare occasions he actually exudes mental control over Harry, planting false images in his mind and luring him to the Department of Mysteries to retrieve the thing, the subjects of the prophecy being the only ones who can access it, which means Voldemort could have probably done that himself. He's taken bigger risks. Naturally, it's fine for all his boys to warp right in there straight after Harry listens to it, like it's no big deal, but they've put themselves in a foolishly weak position here. Harry has already heard this fairly inconsequential prophecy prophecy, and now he need do nothing but drop this fragile crystal ball and destroy it forever. It's of little benefit to him now. Why didn't they come here just a few minutes earlier and eavesdrop on him, or swiped it later from Harry's bedroom? Not to mention, this prophecy is not a good thing for Harry to hear in the first place. It makes Voldemort's death an imperative in his eyes. The resulting conflict seeing the other adult wizards making a rare appearance, and even Big D shows up and flops out his wand for once. Surprisingly, Voldemort wasn't too scared to meet this challenge. It's just a shame he comes now when the risk is very high, when he could have just showed up earlier and swiped the ball himself without having to engage with Harry or anyone else. He really has picked the worst possible time to grow some balls. His currently covert campaign relies on this weak government failing to acknowledge his existence, and they're about to turn up to work. But finally, we get our epic duel between the supreme forces of light and darkness, Voldemort going all out while Dumbledore seems to be acting defensively and pulling his punches. Honestly, this is probably him at a 50% power level. He wouldn't have stood a chance if Dumbledore actually wanted to kill him. Voldemort unnecessarily risking his life in a personal attempt to kill Harry when retreat was the superior option anyway. He really doesn't have much of a nose for strategy, does he? All this mucking around getting him outed when Cornelius Fudge turns up to work and witnesses Voldemort for himself. And many of the Death Eaters were apparently caught and sent to prison after this skirmish.
Oh dear, we are in trouble.
What a toll to pay for an inconsequential glass ball.
One teensy little prophecy.
It would have been far better to just keep your nose clean and stay the hell away from this place. Apparently this run-in putting the fear in Voldemort, who thereafter outsourced the task of defeating Dumbledore to Draco Malfoy of all people. A small boy with neither the will nor temperament to be a Death Eater, let alone defeat one of the greatest white wizards of all time. Ostensibly Voldemort is toying with Lucius and wouldn't mind too much if his kid died, but let's be real here, the truth is Voldemort is just scared of Dumbledore.
These actions are so weak that your heart can't really have been in them.
And this pointless scheme has the additional risk of the Malfoys defecting and spilling all their glorious intel. Not to mention, tipping off Dumbledore with a failed assassination attempt isn't exactly gonna help you. Draco had the good sense to port in some adults to offer assistance, though that probably wouldn't have helped. Luckily for them, Dumbledore was already dying, choosing to make his death meaningful by using it as a means of convincing the Death Eaters and Voldemort of Snape's loyalty. With the school leaderless, and since they've openly declared war on the world anyway, now would be the perfect time to take Hogwarts. Oh no, they're off. Voldemort's confusing standing orders coming back to bite him. After Harry pursued the Death Eaters in a rage, Bellatrix and co fumbling a golden opportunity to scoop him up and take him back to the boss. Or would that actually make him angry? At this point I don't even know. Better to not do anything and pretend nothing happened at all, I guess. Voldemort then spends basically the next 2 movies trying to track Harry down. Weirder still, he can't seem to do it, even at the height of his power. After assassinating the new Minister for Magic and installing his puppet, Pious Thickness, in the position. Voldemort now the shadow ruler of magical Britain, bringing in a fascistic, totalitarian police state. Yet with all this power and resources, he still can't find Harry. His location in part obscured by Snape's disinfo. And the one time he does manage to find him, again he's making his Death Eaters back off so he can try and fail to get his prize. Is there something wrong with you guys ganging up on him? Are the Death Eaters not even allowed to maim him just a little? With that attempt failing, Voldemort fixates on his quest for the Elder Wand, supposedly the most powerful wand in existence if you believe the fairy tales, which naturally Voldemort does. Now understanding the details of the wand clash in the graveyard, Voldemort believing the Elder Wand enough to overcome not only Harry's wand but the almost supernatural protection he seems to enjoy. But unfortunately the Elder Wand, like all this magical BS, has its own complications that will hinder Voldemort even further, because of course it does. At this point, thanks to the trail of evidence Voldemort left behind, Harry, with previous assistance from Dumbledore, has figured out Voldemort's use of Horcruxes and is in the process of rooting them out, which as we know won't be that hard. Eventually taking the crew to Godric's Hollow, where Nagini has been ordered to wait in case Harry visits his parents' grave. I guess guess that's the bare minimum effort Voldemort could muster in terms of triangulating his mortal enemy. Keep in mind Nagini is a Horcrux at this point, why is she anywhere near his enemies on her lonesome? It's also worth noting that Nagini was made a Horcrux after Voldemort's diary was destroyed, which means he technically never had his 6 Horcruxes at any one time, failing to reach his superstitious goal. I mean, I don't want to give credence to Voldemort's silly beliefs, but things are only going to go downhill from here, so there might be something to it. Despite the draconian security measures of this new authoritarian government, they're not even screening for Polyjuice Potion, a ruse they should be more than familiar with, allowing Harry and co to get right in there and swipe the amulet from Dolores Vinegar Tits, and a similar ruse to get the cup from Bellatrix's vault. Along the way, the Death Eaters fumbling several opportunities to nab Harry, though they're attacking so recklessly you'd think they'd be a touch concerned with killing him. The boss would not like that, for some reason. And then they stuff up the best opportunity they've had yet after Harry and co are brought to Malfoy Manor by some of Voldemort's brown shirts. Draco pretends he doesn't recognize Potter, proving he's a big softy at heart, but why does his judgment even need to be relied upon? Harry is one of the most famous people in the wizarding world. He's been in the newspaper numerous times. Bellatrix and Lucius have encountered him on several occasions, and he's currently state enemy number 1 with a wanted poster, media coverage and everything. Not to mention, this guy has Harry Potter's scar, and he's hanging around with Harry Potter's best friends.
If this isn't who we think it is, Draco, and we call him, he'll kill us all. We need to be absolutely sure.
I mean, if it even looks remotely like him, you should probably alert Voldemort, but of course in this dysfunctional organization, that could result in death.
What's he expecting to hear? Good news?
Not even Bellatrix can seemingly pacify him, despite the fact she recently gave birth to his child. Putting aside my surprise that Voldemort is fully formed, surely this is nothing a good wand job couldn't fix.
Grasp your mandrake!
These morons then go from dumb to dumber, keeping a bunch of magic folk all together in one cell, not even frisking them for any magical devices they might have. And whatever magical protections they'd put on the place were inadequate, considering those pesky house elves can just teleport in here like it's no big deal. And in what world was Wormtail an adequate prison guard? These guys can't even contend with house elves, and they honestly think they're the superior race? So Voldemort's most dangerous enemies are whisked away from right under his nose. Meanwhile, Voldemort has been focusing on the more important things, like grave robbing Dumbledore and finally getting the Elder Wand. I'm sure that will solve everything. Let's be honest, at this point, Harry could probably beat you with a twig. No, scratch that, he definitely could. Making his defeat even more likely, Voldemort is starting to get a bit stressed, weakening his mental defenses, allowing Harry to seemingly Skype into his brain at any time, gleaning all kinds of helpful intel such as his quest for the Elder Wand, his current location, the rough location of a Horcrux, and Nagini's status as one. Yet despite Voldemort being a supposed master of both leglomancy, the art of reading minds, and occlumancy, the art of defending against mind readers, he can't seem to offer any defense against Harry, nor can he exert the same level of insight from his enemy.
Is this what you call control?
Of course, their Horcrux linkage could be playing a role, but it's still a bit embarrassing that Potter's skills are superior after a few half-assed lessons from Snape. The only insight Voldemort managing to get is that his Horcruxes are in danger, opting to keep Nagini by his side when sending her to sit at the bottom of a swamp on the other side of the world would obviously be a far better option. Aren't you about to go to war against Hogwarts and the people who are literally looking to destroy your Horcruxes? Harry continues mopping up the last few while Hermione and Ron easily figure out how to destroy them thanks to Harry's previous efforts. These Horcrux destructions do not affect Book Voldemort in any discernible way, but they seem to give movie Voldemort a very uncomfortable orgasm indeed. I bet he hasn't felt that good bad since Bellatrix jumped his wand.
And that kind of act leaves a mark.
Harry and his mates go on to find and destroy every single Horcrux he has except Nagini, leaving Voldemort perilously close to the forever death he so fears, right on the cusp of his final battle for domination. Enraged, he takes it out on one of his followers who committed the grave crime of correctly questioning his course of action.
Shouldn't we wait?
Well, at this point, my friend, I'd say you kind of deserve some feedback.
Call off this attack. Simply seek the boy yourself.
He and Lucius are dead right. Why even bother attacking Hogwarts at this time? Better to consolidate power and assassinate Harry when the opportunity presents itself.
Progress for the sake of progress must be discouraged.
It's worth noting that Voldemort basically controlled Hogwarts until very recently, transforming the school into a bastion of dark wizardry ruled by bullies, with students regularly tortured. So in other words, most self-respecting magic folk wouldn't dream of sending their precious sproglets there, and Hogwarts would have been completely delegitimized and made irrelevant.
The welfare of this school?
But alas, it wasn't to be. Not only did he fail to use this opportunity to get one of his last remaining Horcruxes out of Hogwarts, he also didn't commit even a fraction of his considerable forces to holding the school, leading to Snape being run out of there. So he's back for an unnecessary final battle, and now he has to deal with this magical shield, the Elder Wand resisting him during the effort, Voldemort realizing he is not its true master, mistakenly believing it to be Snape, who he promptly kills. Let's see how that pans out for him.
It's not going to work.
So with the Hogwarts shield down, we've got ourselves a big old magic battle, resembling a discount Pelennor Fields, complete with trolls, magical apparitions flying around, and extremely powerful wizards who refuse to fling any decent spells. After this initial onslaught, Voldemort content to let his enemies regroup by delivering an ultimatum to Harry, seemingly knowing that he'll take the bait.
You just... no.
If only his apparent foresight went just a little bit further.
You depend on feelings and instincts to guide you, and they invariably let you down.
Voldemort failing to recognize the numerous factors preventing him from harming Harry. Lily's protection spell extending to Voldemort after he took his blood, the pseudo-Horcrux within Harry. Not to mention the Elder Wand, which despite what Voldemort thinks, he is still not the master of, and Harry's massive level of selflessness possibly protecting him even further. Once again, for the third time, Voldemort's spell backfires on him. Harry need do nothing more than stand there and take the punishment, routing him without even breaking a sweat, destroying the Horcrux within Harry and temporarily sending him to the afterlife for one final pat on the back from Dumbledore. Meanwhile, Voldemort is knocked unconscious and given a small taste of the suffering that awaits him for eternity. Once he awakes, Voldemort's treatment of his underlings coming back to bite him. Foolishly relying on Narcissa to confirm Harry's demise, she instead chooses to betray her master, seemingly as a means to find her son.
Dead.
Perhaps she knew that Voldemort would take Harry to Hogwarts, or she simply wanted Harry to help her locate Draco. Or maybe she was just sick to death of being a victim to this Voldemort creature and was hoping Harry could take him out. But Tom, old buddy, old pal, riddle me this. Why is it you've displayed a total lack of trust in your followers all this time, while also insisting you must personally engage with Harry, but finally now, at one of the most important moments, you implicitly trust one of your Death Eaters?
You take too much for granted. Has it ever crossed your brilliant mind?
It wouldn't be any skin off your nose to simply incinerate his corpse immediately to make sure there isn't any magical hijinks going on.
Bring wood and oil.
Or perhaps use your leglomancy skills to probe Narcissa's mind, or even Harry's just to check if he's still alive. So a prematurely triumphant Voldemort strolls back into Hogwarts with his nose held high, Harry's body in tow, hoping to demoralize the rest of the crew. Of course, his last and only Horcrux is right there next to him. Probably not a great idea to take her into a war zone.
The safest course of action is to avoid participation of any kind.
And letting Hagrid carry his body seems like yet another foolish move. Who knows, maybe he could pull an Expelliarmus Resurrectus and bring him back from the brink.
10 points to Gryffindor.
Neville Longbottom proving his mettle as the co-chosen one, challenging Voldy on his BS, and showing that puberty not only improved the guy's stature, but seems to have also given him massive brass balls.
No word yet on how Harry Potter's taking this latest emotional blow.
And surprise, surprise, Harry is far from dead. A flustered Voldy attacking him in a rage, and as all hell breaks loose, not ordering Nagini to run off into the forest and hide. Nope, they're both off into the heart of the battle, Voldemort leaving behind his legion of troops to go fight Harry on his lonesome, as if that ever works out for him. A perfect opportunity for the traumatized Malfoys to flee during the chaos, along with some of his Death Eaters. Good call. It should be obvious by now. It just seems impossible for Voldy to win at this stage, though he continues to have ample opportunity. Voldemort finally getting the upper hand in a duel with Harry, and what does he do? Just the usual, starts toying with him for no reason other than to satisfy his sadism and thirst for revenge.
Do enjoy yourself, won't you? While you can.
And Harry is even trying to help him win.
But what if the wand never belonged to Snape? What if its allegiance was always to someone else?
Heavily insinuating that Voldemort is not the Elder Wand's true master, which of course Voldemort ignores.
It may just be the last thing you ever do.
Neville big balls fulfilling his part in the prophecy when he decapitates Nagini.
You are mortal now, like the rest of us. Does that disturb you?
Before Voldemort's spell backfires on him for a fourth and final time. The wannabe immortal Dark Lord given a brutal reality check as he returns to the dust from whence he came, this time for good. Voldemort presumably doomed to an insufferable existence as a deformed fetoid, cowering in pain in the fetal position under a train station seat for eternity. Another hidden magical complexity foiling him once again. This time it was the Elder Wand refusing to kill its true master, apparently now Harry after he disarmed Draco, after Draco disarmed Dumbledore, even though Harry didn't technically disarm Draco of the Elder Wand itself. Whatever, don't think too much. It's magic time. The Dark Lord defeated by a pack of children who, despite their limited years, understood the true value of love and cooperation that empowered them every step of the way. Traits Voldemort was utterly devoid of. Harry, despite being a powerful and intelligent wizard in his own right, effortlessly stumbled into a series of victories thanks to Voldemort's incompetence and his campaign uniting a good portion of the wizarding world against him, leaving Harry more than a few allies willing to lend a hand. For someone who obsessed over his own death, he sure put a massive target on himself. Ultimately defeated by his opposite, someone who embraces mortality and is willing to sacrifice himself to save his friends, supported by those willing to do the same. While isolated and hateful Voldemort fixated on doing everything himself, to his detriment, his planned eternal dominion over the planet ending before it even got off the ground. At the very least, the dude should have been sculling back a constant supply of liquid luck. There is no excuse for being this incompetent in a world where magic exists. But I believe the biggest criticism of Voldemort has to be him squandering his life, obsessing over his own mortality.
I see no persuasive evidence that a life like yours should be wasted simply because you are disgruntled.
Wasting his natural gifts and ultimately accomplishing nothing other than to increase the suffering of others.
You've murdered my cat.
Despite dedicating a decent portion of his life to achieving immortality, he ended up dying at the fairly modest age of 76, very young for a wizard. Not to mention, he spent at least 14 years of that living a wretched existence as a shade. Meanwhile, his sworn enemy Dumbledore, one of the most legendary magic slingers to ever hold a wand, lived to the ripe old age of 125, while doing nothing to artificially extend his life, and he didn't even die of natural causes. He probably could have lived for many more years. But with a Harry Potter reboot in the works, perhaps Voldemort will achieve a bit more longevity than he deserves and bestow us with the bottomless cauldron of stupidity that comes with it. Who knows, there might even be enough to justify a third video.